Hello and welcome everyone to a very unusual webinar. So my name is Fred Vallaeys. I'm co-founder here at Optimizer. And this time we're going to do a PPC town hall. So I'm sharing my screen. We got a couple of panelists on the line as well. So we got all of this together kind of last minute. So it's been great to see the response from everyone attending today. Lots of people on the call from all over the world. As well as lots of panelists who did make time available kind of at the last minute. So really appreciative of them. I'm going to do my best here to kind of be the moderator, presenter, organizer, everything at once. So we'll go through a few slides first, and then we'll let the co-panelists introduce themselves. So there we go. So hopefully you can all see my screen. If not, just go ahead and use that chat box and we'll do our best to help you out. But yeah, so it's not really a webinar today, it is a town hall. And what that means is that it's not just going to be the presenter talking, but we really wanted to open up this forum to anyone to share what they're seeing. And in some way, this is a bit of a therapy session. I think we're all kind of stressed sitting at home, not having the same connections that we usually do, kind of having a lot of things in flux. And so this is going to be a forum for us to talk. Now, when I was at Google, they had 10 core tenets of being an innovative company. And one of these actually struck me as really relevant to what we're in today. So they said that by sharing all the information with everyone, smart people would be able to come up with the right decisions, would make the right decisions. And I think that's what kind of the situation we're in today. Like we've all been doing PPC for a long time. And we all know best practices. Ultimately, now we're in a situation where there is no precedent in the modern internet age for what we're seeing. So most of us are flying blind and we're just trying to get as much information as possible about what others are seeing, what others are doing. And so the point here today is to share that information so that as smart people on this call, we can make a better informed decision and, make the most of a not so great situation. So to help me with that, I'll let the other presenters introduce themselves. And I believe Kirk is not quite yet on the line, but Mike, why don't you go ahead and say a word about yourself?
Hey, Mike Rhodes, CEO and founder at WebSavvy. So we're a done-for-you digital agency, but I also teach a few hundred agencies as well on the agency savvy side. So yeah, how to run an agency and then how to do the technical side of Google.
Cool, and Mike is down under, so you're going to give us the Australian perspective, I bet, right?
Yeah, that's right. And calling from the future.
Yeah, that's right. Tell us what's going to happen. All right, Susan.
Hey, I'm Susan Wenograd. I'm Chief Marketing Officer at Aimclear. We are an integrated digital marketing agency. I handle paid search, paid social strategy for clients, email marketing strategies. We do web development, SEO, all that kind of stuff. So we kind of have a larger sense, I think, in some ways of beyond just paid media of kind of what we're seeing happen in all the different digital marketing spheres. So it's been an interesting week.
Interesting. Can't wait to hear more. And then we haven't these people on as panelists. They joined us at the last minute, but we have Christi Olson and Jon Lee from Microsoft. So if you guys want to say hello as well.
Hello, I'm Christi Olson. I am the head of evangelism for search, both paid and organic for Microsoft. And I've been in the search space for a little over 15 years, doing everything in-house, agency side, and now on the media side.
And hey, I'm Jon Lee. I'm a learning strategist, so I think about training on these topics all day long. Much like Christi, old timer, 14 years in the industry. Weird to think about it that way, but yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having us, Frederick.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And again, I mean, we are the panelists here, but I don't think anyone here has answers or complete answers. So, please do use the chat box and let us know what you're seeing and whether you think we're right or wrong, and come to having the most information possible. We also do have Googlers on the call. They might ask to speak up at some point later with some of what they're seeing as well. By the way, if anyone wants to speak up after the panelists have gone, just put that in the chat box and I'll try to make you a presenter. So just make sure you've got your microphone ready to go if you want to say something. All right, so, but again, the main questions for this webinar today, a lot of agencies here. So what are you seeing your clients doing in response to what's happening? And then how is your company reacting to that? And how are you preparing for the future? So, I made a few slides, so I'm going to start with these and then hand it over to the other panelists. But one thing that I thought was really interesting is that we're in a situation where geographically things are absolutely crazy. Like, I found out that the Danish government's approach to the situation is completely different from the US government's approach. So for example, they will help all small, mid-sized businesses who have a revenue loss. They will actually cover the fixed costs for those businesses for a couple of months. They're going to be paying the rent. They're going to be paying some of the things that have to be paid for those companies to stay in business. Now, the only reason that I happen to know this is because I have a couple of my team who are based in Denmark. And what's kind of crazy here is that even within the United States, you can't think of it as one country anymore. Like literally what is happening in my city and what the government is doing as far as making me stay in my house is very different than what's happening down south in Southern California, right? So kind of the way we've thought of the United States as a market, that just doesn't hold anymore. Like things are so fluid and it's really hard to get information about what exactly is happening in each location. And it makes things challenging, right? And so that's where I think taking a look back at geographic bid modifiers and geographically targeted ads might have to be very different, and putting up some alerts. So that's something we're seeing with different markets. As far as automation, I was reading the Wall Street Journal yesterday, and they kind of explained what's happening with supermarkets, and I thought it was quite relevant to the PPC space as well, right? So you go to the supermarket and a bunch of the shelves are practically empty or much emptier than they used to be. And it turns out that in the supermarket industry, over the past couple of years, the retailers have tried to get rid of inventory in the back room, in the stock room. So most retailers, even a couple of years ago, they would have 6 weeks of inventory sitting in the storeroom, but that was expensive. And so they started putting in place really sophisticated algorithms that would help them determine the right product at the right time for each store. And so now they have 2 or 3 days worth of inventory as opposed to 6 weeks. And so this unprecedented event happened and people were freaking out. All of a sudden, like they just didn't have the inventory to put on the shelves, and the automated systems that were sending in the orders to the suppliers also didn't know what was happening. So they were completely broken, right? So it was actually the automation that's to some degree causing some of the shortages that you see in supermarkets. And I'm not saying this is the full story, but that's part of the story. And so to me, that was really interesting because then you think about PPC, where we've started to rely on so much automation, and we just really can't rely on that necessarily, right? So this is not a seasonal event. This is not necessarily an event that's going to be consistent for a number of weeks. Again, it's so fluid that we really have to be monitoring what these automations are doing. Now, I'm sure some of you are going to share, but we've actually seen some automated campaigns do amazingly well, right? So we've seen accounts where by and large, the volume is down 20, 30%, but then they have an automated campaign, for example, one doing DSA ads, and that campaign has doubled spend and tripled revenue. So, right, I'm not saying automation is bad in this scenario. I'm just saying it has to be monitored because it may not understand what's happening. And I think the other piece that comes into play here that we really have to think about is what are the second order effects, right? So like I just talked about, understanding the different regional responses from governments and stores being shut down. While we as humans, we read the newspaper, we listen to the politicians, so we have an understanding of when stores in a certain region might reopen. The automated systems really don't have that insight. They can't process that. So that's where we need to guide those systems to get things ready for the day when business is back to, maybe a little more normal. And then also like with second order effects, I was talking to my co-founders this morning and they were like, well, you even got to think about stuff like in specific parts of the country or specific parts of the world, is the workforce primarily a workforce that can actually work from home? So in the Bay Area where I live, we have a lot of software developers, we have engineers. It's relatively easy to make that work from home, right? So these are people who are going to continue to get paid. They're going to continue to have a salary. So they might actually be spending more than in other parts of the country that might be more service oriented. I mean, if you think of Orlando, where there's a lot of tourism, that's probably a much more impacted area economically than the Bay Area, right? So, and that's, again, difficult for the computers to understand. We as humans can sort of piece that together. All right, one more, so business responses. So a couple of things that I've seen that I find interesting was companies are certainly looking to capitalize on this situation by doing some branding, by being helpful to consumers. And I think Disney was one of the earliest examples that I saw. So they said, schools are closed, kids are at home, we're going to put the movie Frozen 2 on streaming 3 months before we thought we would actually do that. Now, Disney Plus is not one of the leading streaming providers, and they've actually gotten some flack over the lack of new content. But this is a play they're making to say basically like, listen, people are at home, they're going to be looking for things to do. This is our chance to put that brand back in front of the consumer and do it in a helpful way. We've seen fitness apps. So fitness app like Peloton, I think they used to do a 2-week free trial. Now they've shifted to a 90-day free trial. So they're basically saying for the duration of what's likely to be this shelter-in-place type situation, you can use the app for free. And why that's really interesting, I think, is that in that span of time, people can actually make behavioral change, right? So people who used to go to gyms, they might actually now legitimately start to use an app and get into the groove of using that. And when it comes time to go back to the gym when the gym reopens, they might ask themselves the question, do I actually enjoy the at-home on-demand experience more than going to a physical gym? So, and what that says is both companies making an aggressive play to get new customers, but those companies that are affected, even if the gym is not open, the physical gym is not open, they still have to be defensive because their lunch is being eaten by others right now. That's because consumers are being retrained. I did a pickup at Best Buy yesterday. At Best Buy, they have bollards, fences, making sure nobody goes into the store, but you can actually pick up your online orders. So we all know about buy online, pick up in store. That behavior is now being forced on consumers. So consumers who've never done this, they're getting used to it, right? What does that going to mean when we come out of this, all of this? Does that mean that as a retailer who maybe hasn't really focused much on local inventory, that might be a more important aspect to get ready in your campaigns for when business is back to normal? Also, then along the same lines, but telling consumers that you're actually open. So here in the Bay Area, in many places of the country, non-essential businesses are closed. Best Buy is not an essential business. However, they figured out how to turn their store operation into kind of an online operation. And so they have to tell people, consumers, that yes, in fact, you can actually show up to the store in your car, shout through the window what it is you want to buy, and we'll get it out of the store for you, and we'll toss it into the car, and you'll toss the credit card, and that transaction can still happen, right? So not everyone knows what's happening with that, so you still have to tell consumers. Right, and so the others will share more, but we are seeing some cheap CPCs, and so that could set up some opportunities for some nice brand building. And then I promise my final slide with some thoughts that I have. Consumer response, right? So in some of the accounts that we see with an optimizer, we see travel accounts completely flatlining, budgets completely cut. And that makes sense when you're an airline and you're no longer flying, or you've reduced flights by 95%. You're probably not looking to spend a lot of money to book reservations when you don't know when people will actually fly again. I think we also see consumers being very, obviously they want to buy hand sanitizer. Even if they find an ad for hand sanitizer, that hand sanitizer is not available online, right? So are retailers wasting money on things they can't actually deliver? Or even in the case of Amazon, where Prime delivery, I've talked to people who said that things that used to take 2 days to get delivered are now going to get delivered in 30 days. That may not be okay to the consumer, and they're going to shop around for someone local who might have that buy online pickup in store type experience, right? So this could be great for the Targets of the world. And then the types of things they're buying, right? So webcams, computer screens, anything to work from home, that's basically sold out. Any household cleaning products, that's sold out. And people want to buy that stuff. But luxury goods, people are delaying those purchases. Nobody wants to spend money right now when there's uncertainty around whether they're going to have a paycheck just a few weeks from now. Okay, so that's enough from me. I'll let Mike share a couple of things that he's seeing with this.
Yeah, so I haven't focused maybe as much on the on the CPC side and what's happening inside of accounts, I thought I'd go a little bit bigger picture just for a different look at this. And this is sort of the conversations that I've been having with students and clients and friends who run their business. The main one here for me has been just let's focus on the long game. Everything obviously is in flux right now. The phrase I've found myself using over and over again the past 2 weeks, focus on the relationships, not the transaction. Think about the people on the other side of this. So we just, we train a bunch of people how to do this stuff. We just reduced our cost of that from $299 a month to $9 a month, just to cover hosting costs, because people are stuck at home. They want to learn. Let's make it more available. Protect your team. I was actually away last week in Australia domestically, thankfully, not overseas. I might not have been able to get back in the country if I'd been overseas, but while I was away, they were amazing. They sorted out everything, got the work from home in place, which isn't too unusual for us. Most of us work from home at least 1 day a week anyway, so we didn't need to do practice runs, but they worked out, what do I have at home? What do I need? They ransacked the office and took a bunch of screens and webcams and headsets and all the plants that we just bought, took all the plants home. I think the biggest thing there is the psychological safety of that. So setting up schedules with your teams, routine is key right now, and just communication, face-to-face communication. So we are all jumping on as a management team. We're jumping on every single morning and just checking in. How are you doing? What are you seeing? And then my team leads are checking in with their teams every day. I think that's absolutely essential right now. People are going to get a bit anxious the more that this goes on. They're going to get a bit scared. We, in Australia, for instance, we don't have what the UK has done. So you mentioned what the Danish government were doing. In the UK, I believe they're covering 80% of wages. I think New Zealand just announced something similar yesterday. So hopefully the Australian government follows. But yes, like winding down all of your expenses as quickly as possible. We're talking to SaaS companies. Many of them, many of the smaller ones have been really good there. I just saw the email reply from Acuity this morning saying absolutely 90 days free. Don't worry about it. It's the bigger ones that are slower to act, I've seen. And obviously we're asking our new landlord for a bit of help on the rent side of things. Obviously hiring gets frozen now, and we offer everybody in the team gets $5,000 a year to learn whatever they want to learn that's connected with work, and $1,000 sort of wellness fund to go learn whatever it is that you want to learn or spend on yourself. Unfortunately, we've had to freeze all of that. We still have the library here in the office, but nobody can come in because everybody is stuck at home at this point. And then I'm seeing clients sell the inventory, to your point, Fred. They don't want to be sitting on 6 weeks or 12 weeks of stock. The smarter, fast acting ones are doing sort of Black Friday type sales, trying to get rid of that stuff quickly. That'll bring a little bit of cash in, but obviously also reduces those stocks because they just don't want to be sitting on those, and they don't know how long they might be sitting on those. Thinking through the plans, I think, as business leaders, as agency owners, this is critical right now, not to scare yourself silly, but we have to think through some scenarios here. Is it a slight drop? Are we thinking 20, 30% down? That's one scenario. Is it most clients are pausing, or if they haven't yet, by the end of the month or by the end of April? I know in the States, shall I call it leadership? I'll call it leadership. Your leadership thinks this is all going to, we'll be back to normal in 2 weeks. I don't personally think that's the case, looking at what's happening in Italy and what has happened in China. I think this is a weeks-long, possibly months-long thing that takes the world years to recover from. So what might happen to Rev? How are you going to pay expenses? How much cash do you have on hand in the bank? How is that going to get allocated? And that extreme scenario, what happens if you have to shut your doors? Obviously, none of us are planning on doing that, and none of us expect that to happen, but at least be thinking it through at a high level, because the worst thing you want to be doing is suddenly get confronted by this. I mean, you've got to think about your legal obligations in here as well. It's illegal to trade insolvent. So knowing the rules, knowing the legal side of things, knowing what is being offered. We're being offered, refunds on payroll tax, there's some business stimulus packages coming. It's messy because we have state government and federal government. I'm guessing you do too in the States. And that's a little confused right now. And obviously it's changing by the day. So just having one or two people on your team sort of stay up with that and see what's happening, and playing offense, not just, oh my God, it's all happening to me. I think you said this before, Fred, but what can we be doing, thinking about, preparing for the other side of this? So again, it's another form of contingency planning, but thinking through what next. We don't know when next is, but we can at least be planning for that. Do you want to jump to the next slide? I think I've got one other slide with a couple of thoughts on there. So I've sort of mentioned a little bit of this, but I just, again, on the people side of things, I think that's the most important thing right now. Scheduling those team meetings. We're doing, we haven't done a virtual lunch yet. We're talking about doing one either today or tomorrow at the end of the week, but certainly a virtual beer on a Friday afternoon is going to happen. We're Australians after all. Checking in, talking to people. I was chatting to mates in the UK last night, chatting to a few mates in Australia, and just catching up on Zoom and just how you do it, just checking in on people. Many people are working from home for the first time. I think for many of us, it's kind of normal. But for a lot of people, Susan, you were saying before we jumped on, people are, oh my God, there's this thing called Zoom, which Fred's mum calls Zoom Us, which is so cute. But this is new to them. So like it's basic shit, but just having a separate place. And I know that potentially sounds like an incredibly privileged thing to say, that we happen to have a house that's large enough to have a space for work and a space for the kids to run around. We're very, very fortunate in that. But even if you're just in a small place, just trying to have at least a separate space and trying to have a little bit of routine where you don't just crawl out of bed, wander over, open up the laptop, or sit in bed on the laptop and work. Get up, have a shower, put something other than the jammies on, and walk 2 feet across the room and try and do work. And equally important at the end of the day is to shut the damn thing and walk away from it and get some clarity. I think that's really important because everything is going to merge, and it's going to be very, very easy to just be constantly online and working while watching Netflix, which is not a good idea. Exercise becomes more important, even if that's 15 minutes, if you're allowed out. In the UK, my mate last night, he is now only allowed out 1 hour a day. It's a bit like being in prison. And he said when he went to the park was almost full at 7 o'clock in the morning, which people are just not taking this seriously. Please stay at home, people. Even 15 minutes a day there is key. And there's so much good stuff on YouTube. There's yoga, Pilates, stretching. There's so much stuff that we can be doing. So we're sort of sharing that stuff around the team. Here's a good video, here's a good playlist. The team have set up a work from home Spotify playlist that the guys are adding to, just little things like that keep us connected. And obviously on the education side, again, there's a ton of free stuff out there. I think being careful what we stick in our brains right now is really important, and a whole lot less social media and media in general. Turn off the TV or have a small amount of time for that, but don't be watching all of this craziness all the time. My favorite thing that I shared last night was the Italian mayors. I don't know if you guys have seen this, the Italian mayors responding to people not taking things seriously. Oh my God, they swear so well in Italy. It's fantastic. You've got to go check this out on YouTube if you haven't seen it. I will get you with flamethrowers. Your dog has a prostate problem. They are amazing. Like, it doesn't translate, but you have to watch this. I'm going off on a tangent. Right, on the wellness side, I just wanted to cover these 4 things, if that's okay. I know we're a long, long way away from like how much clicks are costing right now, but I think this is, he said, like, what are you seeing? What's important? Add lots of information so that we can all make informed decisions. This is where my brain went. 4 things. Very quickly, on the mental side of things, sleep is more important than ever. I know it's difficult. I know we're all lying awake at 3:30 in the morning, wondering what's going to happen to our businesses, but sleep just got more important. scheduling out your day. We've even done this for my eldest daughter, who's obviously now home from school. Gav's put up on the whiteboard, you know, from 9 to 10, we're doing this, from 10 to 11, 11 to 12, then we're going out for a walk, then you're playing with your sister for a bit. Like, we've got that schedule just to keep a little bit of normalcy, I guess, going on. The physical side, I mentioned exercise already, but just eating and drinking healthily. Like, now is not the time to find solace in the bottom of a bottle. And if you can buy them at your local supermarket, I think supplements are probably a good idea right now. With lettuce is like $10 here right now. It's going a little crazy. Emotional, be kind, not just to other people, but to yourself. I think we all need to be reminded of that. Go help someone, go wander down the road, go meet a neighbor that you've never met, go see if the old people that live on your street are okay and if they've got enough food. I think that stuff becomes, I'm really hopeful that on the other side of this, we become a more empathetic planet, a more local planet. I fear that that may be a really long way away and it may take us a long time to get there, but I'm hopeful for that. And I think we all have to stay a bit hopeful and optimistic right now. And gratitude journal. We've all seen, you know, those TED Talks that talk about the things that you need to do, but nobody does it. Do it. It's awesome. I remember, no, I won't bother telling stories. It's all right. Gratitude journals. And on the spiritual side of things, meditate if you can. At a minimum, breathe. I actually read last night that just, can you breathe in and hold your breath for 10 seconds? That's a really good way to know if you've got like the early stages of this thing, how it's different from, I'm not a doctor, I don't play one on TV, but you know, how it's different from a common cold or from flu. It's a respiratory disease. And so that's a good thing. So just breathing exercises. I love box breathing. It's just, if you can do this 3 times a day, you breathe in for 5 seconds, hold it for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds, hold it for 5 seconds, and then you can work your way up to 10, 20, 30 seconds from there. Or Wim Hof. I think Wim Hof's a great, funny, crazy guy from your part of the world, Fred, who, yeah, his breathing techniques have been shown to alkalize the blood and boost your immune system. Like, now's a good time to go check him out on YouTube and do some crazy Wim Hof breathing. That's all I had. Nothing about CPCs in there. I'm sure that's what.
Thank you, Mike. Some good advice there. We do have questions, and so I apologize. It looks like folks can't actually use the chat box, but I'm trying to replicate what is being asked in questions. So Susan, maybe when you talk, you can speak a bit about that question, like shifting from paid search to maybe other channels. And by the way, we had Kirk, our analyst, join us as well, so we'll hear from him in just a moment. So Susan, why don't you take it away next?
Yeah, sure. I think we're seeing a few things as far as how people are moving their money around in paid. And some of it's actually going to the marketing piece of it, as opposed to just kind of the over-reliance on people search for this thing, so I'm showing them this ad because my product will do that. I'm seeing brands have to think a lot more carefully about how they can be helpful during this time. So not that they're necessarily trying to find a different angle, but I think that a lot of brands have marketed the same way for a long time because they never had to market during a pandemic. So it's kind of a different thought process to say, well, this is normally, you know, what resonates with our customers. This is normally how we sell things. And we're seeing a lot of brands having to kind of give their products and offerings a fresh look to say, how does this change now that they might not be buying for those reasons, but we are helpful in these ways that we've never really marketed on or talked a whole lot about before because it wasn't a necessity then, but now it is. So I think that there's some messaging pivoting that we're seeing, which doesn't necessarily align as much with search because there might not be search volume for those things. So I'm seeing a lot of thought go into, you know, how is it we're representing our products and services? How are they beneficial to people in this situation as opposed to how they were beneficial 6 months ago? And I don't think that that's something that necessarily comes across easily within a text ad for search. So I think that that's kind of where we're seeing a shift on the paid social side is how do we communicate the feel of the, you know, the time that we're in, how our products and services help. So there's a little bit more focus, I feel like, on the marketing as opposed to the tactics. I mean, the tactics obviously amplify that message, but there's certain platforms that do it better than others. So we're seeing kind of a more heavy reliance in that way on social from a branding perspective, as opposed to, it's kind of the long game as opposed to the, the short wins. And then we're also, seeing a lot of brands kind of take a step back and say, let's take a look at holistically what always kind of works for us that we could make better. So if we look at like our email list, and this is typically our open rates, our click-through rates, and how much we sell, is there room there that we're not going after? Have we kind of just had the same thing going forever? Have we not revisited it in a while? What kind of language are we using in there? So I'm seeing a shift to the non-paid pieces that kind of keep the engine room running in the background. There seems to be a little bit more focus going towards them, where it's like, are we creating the content we should be creating right now? Are people searching differently for things where we can provide value? So it's been interesting, because while there's kind of the freaking out part of, oh my gosh, my ROAS is down and my CPAs are up, it's also, I think, forcing brands to think more holistically as marketers, and, not get so hung up on their one channel, whether they're, most brands have them, whether it's like organic or it's paid search or it's paid social. There's usually like one channel they tend to obsess over a little bit, sometimes to the detriment of others. So I think in some ways we're actually seeing some diversification occurring that probably should have happened a while ago. It's just that they're being forced to think about it now, as from a more global marketing perspective. So that's been interesting to watch, because in some ways it's like launching a new product. They can't rely on the stuff that they always did.
Cool. And can you also say a word on YouTube if you know about that? So one question was Google's advising to use YouTube because it is cheaper branding traffic at this point. A lot of questions generally coming in about, all right, now is the time to focus more on brand. And also if you have any insight in B2B versus B2C when it comes to those questions.
Yeah. So on the YouTube side, I haven't seen anything shift yet. I don't think it's bad advice from Google, in that, it's certainly from a cost per view. Was that Mike? Oh, sorry,
I didn't want to interrupt. I was just sort of yelling to Fred that.
Oh, yeah, no, it's okay.
I'll add something. I'll go after you.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly from a branding perspective, it's a cheaper way to get your message out there. I mean, I think when it comes from a B2B to B2C perspective, a lot of it depends on the vertical that the software is in. So, we have a client that does something related to the construction industry. Little scary time for them right now. I mean, there was already kind of are we in a housing bubble thing to begin with? Now that is kind of being forced even more so. So that's all sort of grinding to a halt. So in their vertical, kind of scary, but if you're looking at like medical technology or that kind of stuff, that stuff is still performing strongly. So in the B2B sector, it kind of is just really more hit or miss. From a B2C perspective, obviously aside from obvious e-com stuff, we're also seeing services be affected. Anything that has to do with in-home delivery, in-home assembly, any service that utilizes that is really struggling at this point. So there's kind of those ripple effects of like, the vertical that things are in and whether they are useful during this time or whether or not they can even perform their jobs.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Google have been telling us, session times have increased on YouTube, not surprisingly. Yes, CPCs are cheaper there, but I think brands really need to think about what that message is, and is it too early to be talking about themselves? So many brands are completely tone deaf at this point and no idea of the situation that we're in, and just continuing to run existing material. They haven't changed autoresponders. They haven't.
Or they're making it worse. I mean, I was talking to someone yesterday that said they saw a commercial on YouTube that's like, make your product more viral than Corona.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
It's like,
I
mean,
take a look at
you have to try to offend people. It's like,
I think folks should also take a look at their drip campaigns and anything that was automated, because so much of this like messaging that seems wrong right now, it's not that people intentionally do it, it's coming from an automation, right? And I think if you do have a good offer like Disney's doing or like the gyms are doing, like people very much want it, and so that is good messaging.
I've noticed that with TV commercials, they're even starting to swap those out pretty quick. They did the Hotels.com did a Captain Obvious commercial that we saw last night where he's sitting there eating popcorn by himself, and it was like, distance is a good thing. And so it was like, but then in the same breath, it was funny. We were watching, I think we were watching Better Call Saul, and when it went to commercial, it was like sponsored by Corona, the beer. And the commercial starts with a whole bunch of people on the beach running together and like touching each other. So I was like, they probably couldn't switch it out fast enough, but I was like, ooh, that wasn't good. So there's misses like that they might not even be able to help, but you notice it.
I bet Kirk and Christi and Jon are itching to say something as well. So who wants to go next, guys?
I'll jump in. Hi guys, this is Jon. I've been answering some of these questions that I see as best I can, and will continue to do so. There seems to be a lot of uncertainty, and I'll be frank, uncertainty is the word of the month, right? For everybody, everywhere. And so we're all in it together, I guess is what I would say, right? And there's no stupid question either. For everybody, this is uncharted territory. And I would push pause there to say, having worked in this industry through the 08, 09 market downturn, search was consistent. Now, granted, you had verticals, right, that went down, dropped, shut off completely. But you had plenty of other verticals that ramped, new businesses that came about in that time. And so as digital advertisers, I think there's a lot of assurance we can take from that. Now, granted, nothing's guaranteed, but I think there's a lot of assurance we can take from that search has its place. And I saw something earlier today, I don't recall the source, but it was basically, if you think about, the classic phrases of push versus pull marketing, we're seeing a lot of people pausing those push mechanisms, right? I think, branding, think YouTube, and instead doubling down on search, right? Where it makes sense to do so. Not a one size fits all for sure, but definitely something that's happening. But I would say just like big picture, lots of questions around ads, like what should I do with my ads? And Susan, I think you made a great point, and that is now's not the time to be edgy and offensive. Now's the time to be respectful, lead with kind, just common sense, folks. Let's be honest, it's just common sense. Like okay, it's nice to have fun, and right now if you have a product or service, be direct. But more specifically, if there's been changes to your business model, but you're still open for business, make sure your ads are reflective of that, whether it's delivery options, delivery timelines, even a new offering, right? So maybe you just had to completely change things to keep the doors open. Make sure that your ads are reflective of that. Pretty common sense stuff. I heard, Frederick, you talked about DSA early on. Dude, I think that's brilliant, particularly if you're in an industry that is still open for business. Think insurance, think telehealth companies, right, who have seen just insane skyrocket business over the last couple of weeks. Open the floodgates, be receptive to that. And DSA is a great way to do that, particularly if you think about those queries that you've not thought about and that your current keyword sets aren't open to be receptive to. DSA is a great way to capture and ride that wave. And then would be remiss if I don't mention RSAs, just because that's both on the Google side and Microsoft side. It leverages machine learning to say, okay, of all these different, cool, nice, kind headlines and body copies that you have, these are the ones that are going to match the queries that we're seeing right now. And because that's automated, right, it takes some of that control out of your hands. I know, don't yell at me. It is going to be doing some good things for you. And, I can't say enough good things about RSA, but if you haven't leaned into that just yet, now's a good time, I think, to give it a go.
Thanks, Jon. All right, we have a PPC celebrity, Kirk William, so you probably don't need much introduction, but why don't you say who you are? You do a lot of e-commerce. So, and I think people would also love to hear if you have a view on it, automated bidding versus reverting to manual in this situation.
Yeah, I apologize for my late entry here. I was signed in as the viewer, like a noob, so not a panelist. So thank you for getting me the correct link. Yeah, I echo what how Jon started. I'm seeing posts come out by people saying, hey, we did some average thing of all of our clients, and like this is what we saw with CPCs, or this is what we saw with conversion rates. And literally you'll scroll down further in your feed and see someone from another agency being like, hey, here's what we saw right now. And sometimes they're like completely opposite. All of our conversion rates are going up, all of them are going down, CPCs are up, CPCs are down, right? So like reiterating right now, this is completely a unique, weird, new situation. And I think it is really, really, really important to be focused on what is your account doing and how to directly impact and work in that account, because honestly, no matter what everyone's saying in terms of what averages out there and stuff, yours might be different. We are seeing accounts just do just crazy different things. So that's probably one of the first things, is just like read your individual client, what their goals are, what's happening, and like make the best decision that you can. And I know that probably is kind of an obvious, might go without saying, but in some ways don't react to the post being written on Twitter, like react to what you know as a good marketer is happening in your account. I think that's really important. A couple of kind of things. So we're agency, we're focused a lot on e-commerce stuff, so that's usually in my brain. We are definitely seeing some obviously concerning things with brands, as well as some positives. Okay, so again, it kind of goes into an account by account basis. We do tend to see those match at some point. If we see a brand doing really well, and if we put a little bit of thought into it, that's probably because somehow it can be used by people who are stuck in their house for 2 weeks. We had this one client that it was doing really well, and it was almost like this surprise, like, why haven't they heard? And then I realized, hey, it has to do with like hobbies. People are bored, you know, so they're buying more of this, something that can feed their hobby. And so right now, one thing that we've noticed like very, very recently to capitalize on for brands and retailers, Amazon is hopping out right now, and we are seeing some really big opportunities there. So, you know, Amazon has, I forget the specifics of what they've done, and as many people say, the only thing that we can know for sure is like that we don't know anything for sure right now. Stuff changes so fast. But Amazon is basically paused, I think, the reception of any non-essential things into their warehousing and that. And so you're actually going to see for people who want to, sorry, the screen changed. Can you still hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, we are seeing that for a lot of things on Amazon, a lot of products right now, they're getting ridiculous lead times. I mean, we're talking like late April to May. And so like we have clients who, you know, Amazon has been a real big competitor for them, that all of a sudden conversion rates, ROAS, traffic is just shooting through the roof, because all those people that used to buy on Amazon are clients. So like there might be an actual opportunity to capitalize on that real quick right now. So just kind of be aware of that. You know, Mike and others noted kind of the dead stock thing, making sure to clear that out if you can. That makes a lot of sense, I think. Also, another call out would be probably worth reanalyzing where your actual profit and your actual ROI lands. A lot has changed, a lot of stuff with your shipping rates, things that you're sourcing, and you know that might not always think about that translating eventually into your advertising ROAS goals. But in some ways, you might need to adjust your advertising return on ad spend, your ROAS goals, based upon like what things look like right now in late March. That is completely changed from a week ago. So that's probably one tip as a brand. Maybe it's time to just get back in, make sure you know your numbers really well, and if you need to, do communicate that to your account managers, your agencies, or your in-house people, so that we can kind of adjust things to make sure that we're not aiming at a target of back when things were a lot different in February. Yeah, so I couldn't remember, what was the question you had asked, Fred? Oh, was it target ROAS, bidding, automated, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, so just generally automated of any type versus going back to manual.
Yeah, so okay, so smart shopping right now, we have some accounts where smart shopping, so that's a very, very, very automated thing in Google. Smart shopping in some accounts is just on the struggle bus, and as we are running simultaneous standard shopping as well in the same account, not seeing it. In fact, we've actually seen sometimes growth in return on ad spend for standard shopping, and just complete hit in Smart Shopping ROAS. You know, and there's going to be some level of traffic change as well that I think everyone is aware of. We're all seeing some level of traffic fluctuation. Again, at times being tied back to if it's a product or service that someone can utilize in like a global quarantine setting, you're probably seeing those numbers increasing and vice versa. So that being said, for fully automated solutions, there does seem to be early reads that, yeah, they're struggling. I mean, which, to be fair, again, to the point of everything is changing and there's just not really any sort of point of this that we can figure out what's going on. The machines are struggling as well. We have found some benefit in having some level of control. I know everyone hates manual bidding. Man, there are times, especially in shopping, we still see it do really well. And so, like, hey, we'll still work with that. We also at times will utilize things like max clicks, believe it or not, if it matches with a strategy that we're doing in certain things. You know, we've done target ROAS again to the point of be cautious with that and what that looks like as well. But so far, it does seem, to answer the question, that like super fully automated systems probably are a little bit struggling right now. And if there's some level that we can assist them, or even maybe just kind of, I don't know, freeze things a little bit with more of a manual or some sort of half machine, half human type guidance, that seems to be doing okay right now. I'm not sure what others are seeing, but that's what we're seeing.
Christi is trying to add something to this as well. Thanks for being patient.
I've been trying. And I completely agree with Kirk in the sense of there's going to be some cases where your automated bidding is going to work, but a lot of instances, if we go back to like, think of the holiday periods when you have those massive peaks and valleys of purchase behavior happening. That's what we're seeing right now, is that what people are purchasing, they're doing some panic buying potentially. And so you're seeing those peaks and valleys, which the automated systems just aren't handling super well. So if you want to go back, you think about your attributions and think about what's happened for purchase behavior over the last week, 2 weeks, month, and how that's shifted over your year-over-year data. You're going to want to, at least personally, I would go and start looking at manual-based bidding to sort of make up for where you're seeing peaks or valleys from what you might not have had previously. It's worth saying that on the Microsoft side and Microsoft advertising, we have a lot of data and we have a lot of people looking at data right now. And one of the biggest trends that we are seeing across the board is the fact that the consumer decision journey or the purchase journey has completely shifted and changed in almost every vertical. That what was true a month ago isn't necessarily true today with the length of time for purchase. We're seeing it extend out in a lot of verticals where it might have been a 2-week look to book window or look to purchase window where they're lengthening, and then CPG and goods that a lot of the CPG or consumer product goods are much shorter now on those purchase buy cycles, which means as a marketer, we have to think about what is it that people are looking for right now, which is what the DSAs that John, and I'm trying to think, John, Mike, and I think Susan might have touched on DSA a little bit as well as you, Fred, use that as your catch-all for what you might be missing from the campaigns. I like the strategy of using DSAs and or broad and broadience to really try to capture some of those queries you might not have known otherwise. There's a lot of volume increases that we are seeing on Bing right now. And there's a lot of opportunity to capture that volume, especially as we're going into this time frame. So think about the keywords and using either the keyword recommendations tabs, using strategies like the broad audience or DSA to really capture those clicks coming through, or even the recommendations tab. We have keyword recommendations coming in there. You also want to think about your metrics in addition. So as we're talking about the bidding strategies, do you automate or do you manual? The metrics you use are also going to be changing a little bit as the decision journey lengthens or potentially shortens across the board. So where you might have used ROAS or target CPA as that metric, you might want to start looking at where are you at with the market as it stands today with people coming in or coming out of the marketplace pretty quickly. So looking at those market share metrics is going to be another area you're going to want to look at pretty quick. And I will stop there since I could keep on going.
And I am muted, so I'm talking to myself. Thank you, Christi. Very useful. We had Amit from Google, account strategist, who requested to have the floor for a minute. So Amit, if you want to tell us what you're seeing, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me as well today. It's a real pleasure to meet you all. Thank you very much. So I'm an account strategist for the UK market. I deal with agencies in the UK and I help them with their accounts every single day. And I mean, obviously, during this time, I've seen a lot of changes. This week specifically has been a real big challenge for us because, as a team, because it's been the transition period for the UK where they've gone from being in the office through to actually, being at home. So as a result of that, like it's been pretty tough. So I think that volatility has been reflected not just in doing my day-to-day job and dealing with my agencies, but also in the data and the search data that we're getting on the on search engine on Google basically. I can't see right now because it looks like the screen's frozen. I guess when it freezes, I'm just going to assume that it's still working. Excuse me, I'm new to webinars.
We can still hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know. I think what I've found really is more than anything is that definitely behaviors changing. What I'm seeing a huge increase in is home items and home improvement. And what I've seen is that people are nesting basically. So there's a lot of people who are buying things basically for their houses in order to get prepared for being at home for a long period of time. Okay, so things such as home improvement, which is like home improvement, but things which involve huge cosmetic changes to the house. So things like double glazing, for example, and things like that. That's totally out of the window. Like no one, no one actually wants to do huge cosmetic changes to their houses right now because no one wants to be living in their house whilst they're having their glazing changed, or things like construction. Like if someone's having construction work done on their house right now, then the likelihood is that construction work is probably going to be paused. So I have a lot of accounts in a lot of industries, which is lead generation in the construction industry, and also from what I understand with the UK government is that big construction contracts are probably going to be paused as well during this time. So in terms of construction, like and also home improvement, that's kind of on pause for big cosmetic stuff. But then other small things, so things like plumbers and electricians and lead generation for people who actually come and repair something in your home is still quite active and still quite popular. So there's a lot in terms of those services. And then what I've been talking to my companies about, and my real focus every single day is sort of more along the lines of with Mike actually, in that I've been just literally kind of helping my agencies to weather the storm and just understand what kind of conversations can they be having with their clients, and how can their clients basically be adapting their businesses in order to basically be helping people essentially. So how, there's my whole team has been asking the whole day, like the whole week, like, does anyone have any official links from Google about what we should be doing for what we should be sending our agencies, right? And the truth is that internally they haven't really been very fast to react with content for us to send over. Slowly it's trickling in and we're starting to see some more and more content and information that we can send over to agencies and ways in which we can help them to strategize. But my main focus has been, how can we help your business to adapt to helping people during this time? How are we going to, is your product and service going to be necessary during this time? And if not, how can we keep you under the people's attention? So I've been focusing on smart display campaigns and smart shopping. Those have been like the main things that I've been really encouraging my businesses to implement. But it completely depends on what products it is that they're selling and that sort of thing. But like I said, the main stuff is really home stuff that people are going to need at home, really. So that's why I think like Amazon have gone down to the bare essentials, but things like workout gears and barbecues and curtains and things like that. Those are the things that people are going to want because they want to make sure that they've got comfortable houses to weather this storm in terms of fast-moving consumer goods.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's a great perspective. And we had one more volunteer, Dan Barak, who wanted to say words. I don't know if your microphone is on, but the floor is yours if you want it.
Hey, I'm here. You guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Ah, okay. Well, thanks for letting me pitch in here. As a luxury jewelry brand, James Allen, we've obviously had some challenges. The fulfillment is challenged because it's based in New York and there's a total lockdown there, so that's been a challenge. So we've had to pare down our campaigns and basically just choose which campaigns to leave active and pause the rest. I mean, it's been quite a challenge, but it's also you know, to try to see what you can do with a small percentage of your original PPC budget. So, you know, choosing, you know, the campaigns that have overall better performance is, you know, what I've been seeing now. I'd be happy to answer any question.
I guess maybe the question on most people's mind then is, have you actually been shifting that PPC budget that you now can no longer spend to other channels, or are you just basically sitting on the cash because there's so much uncertainty?
Yeah, basically we're not able to fulfill, or the fulfillment is so long and the demand is down. We've just basically been paring down budgets more or less. And in fact, you know, next week we don't even know if we'll be open. Well, we're waiting to see what comes down from the top. So it's quite a certain time.
All right, we've got Mother's Day right around the corner, which I'm sure is a time when people do buy jewelry. So is that?
Oh yeah, we're going in-house with, you know, the insider sales with the email. You know, we're starting the sale process a bit early, kind of jump starting the you know, first with the inside sales with the email, and then later we'll start with the site-wide sale. You know, sooner than later. So that's what we're doing. It's just holding on, you know. I'm personally taking the opportunity, you know, the more time I have extra time to work more on the feed. There's always feed projects to do, so I'm taking the opportunity to work more on the feed. So
may I just also pitch in? Thank you so much for those insights as well. I've also realized that, like, with B2B specifically, because obviously everyone's going to be working from home. For example, one of my clients, they do online document signing, things like online document signing software. That's just one example of the kind of software which I expect to really see a big increase during this time. I mean, I'm trying to spend a lot of my time really focusing on understanding which I've got a list of new companies that I'm going to be dealing with from Q2, apologies, because it's a new financial year, so I get given a new portfolio, right? So I've gone through every single company that I've got, and I've had a look at what industry they're in to understand, and I'm basically predicting what I think is going to happen with their business, right? What I've seen is that the companies who are B2B IT tools, apps, which people can use at home, which are going to make workflow a lot easier, these businesses, for me, I've been working with them on how they can help to build their remarketing lists and then use YouTube in order to really educate the people who are on those marketing lists on how their apps, how are they going to specifically help companies to work from home. So, because work from home is going to be huge, not just now, but I think moving forward as well, because I think a lot of companies will not only will they realize that, okay, right now we have to operate from home, but also in the future, working from home will probably become more of a thing. It was even predicted in the beginning of 2020, before all of this passed, that you know, this decade will be the decade of people working from home, essentially. And I think that this has obviously been a real push on that sooner rather than later.
Right? I mean, this is the behavioral change that we're now forced to make, the things that we've always put off. But I think this is going to do some great things for the world, actually. You know, probably less traffic. People don't have to go to school at 8 o'clock in the morning because people are learning how to do online education. But it is really pulling the rug out from a lot of people. So, but yeah, I also want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're at the top of the hour. I know some people have to go because they only have one webcam in the house, and the next person needs to go on the next meeting. But thanks everyone for sharing. I think this was great. We're going to try to do it again. We're going to take some of the questions we didn't answer, try to do some blog posts around it, and just kind of keep the information flowing and help everyone get through this together. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you to the panelists for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for organizing it, Fred. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Namaste. Thank you. Goodbye.